So, the first song that we're going to do is inspired by this picture that you can sort of see behind Faye's head. It's actually a picture that I took on a train at about 5 o'clock in the morning as I was leaving London a few months ago. And it's a picture of a friend of mine's shadow on a seat on a train. And now this microphone's too quiet. And I took the photograph, and then we were talking about fairies and their connection to humans, and I was inspired by this picture to write this song. And you need to imagine when you're looking at this picture and listening to this song that the person in question has fallen asleep and night is falling, and we're travelling north on the sleeper train. The song's called Sleeper, and the shadow, as I'm sitting opposite the girl in question, her shadow wakes up and shakes its head and then leaves her body and goes off to dance with her fellow fairy friends somewhere, some undefined magical place. And so yeah, it's called Sleeper, and I'll just sing it and we can see how we get on. So I'd like to introduce Faye. She's going to start off playing the banjo on this song. So on you go, Faye. Summer sleeper leaving London, mind already in the north, hearing echoes from the high rocks where beliefs linger still, out the window catching moments between time and tired eyes. She fell quickly into sleep on a stillness of the mind. I saw what I did not see. I saw what I did not see. I saw what I did not see. Now I know. As the day was growing old and the sun was growing dim, when her shadow into motion tossed her head, just a flicker in the light of a faint and dusky face. Silent, I must run, just let me slip away. I saw, but I did not see. I saw, but I did not see. I saw what I did not see. Now I know. Flowing feline over contours, unworn and dusty sea, tightly stretching sleepy strands till they snap and break away. Lint and black, smell of earth, taste of merriment and mirth, with a white heart burst in time. I'll never understand. I saw what I did not see. I saw what I did not see. I saw what I did not see. Now I know. Shoot your deer, beat your grouse, lay the trees low with your eyes. barren lying. As you sleep, we go to dance on the back of the wild. But such things don't happen now. Such things don't happen now. I saw what I did not see. I saw what I did not see. I saw what I did not see. Now I know.
They say I was too young when my granny died to remember her, but I do. How could I ever forget her? My gran was not like anyone else. She was small and thin and bright-eyed like a bird, with a long white braid coiled on her head, white skin that never browned in the sun, and a wild way about her that made people gossip and shake their heads. They say that she was strange as a girl, high-tempered and headstrong, right into old age. She spoke a secret language, a language like birdsong that she taught only to me, the seventh daughter of her seventh daughter. I remember it still, and the stories she told. Now I shall tell one of them to you. My gran, she came from somewhere else, she said. She didn't know its name. It was not like here. It had no night, and it had no day. Just a low, steady light that never changed. And in that light, the country was green. She called it the green country, and so that's what I call it too. She said that she had a brother there, and one day, walking in the hills, they found a cave. Or maybe it was not a cave, but a hole in the hill. And inside was a light that shone like gold. They walked toward it, hand in hand. The passage led them back out into the hill, but the hill had changed. Everything had changed. The sun was a bright ball in the sky, and they'd never seen such light before. They'd never seen a sky so blue, or trees that were brown as well as green. They knew at once this was not their world, and so they turned to go home again, but the cave was gone. They searched and they searched, but the cave had disappeared. And then they sat in the cold, strange grass, holding each other and shivering, until the men coming home from the fields crossed over the hill and found them there. Now my mother, she says that Gran was only a foreign girl from across the sea, from France maybe, or Germany, but that's a story with less truth than the one I am telling you now. The men who took those children home, they knew exactly what they had found. Fairies, children of the Fae folk, two little lost sheep of the other world. That boy and girl were green as apples, their hair, their skin, their eyes, their teeth, the clothes they wore, the shoes on their feet. They were small and thin and green all over. They could not speak the king's plain English, and they could not eat our good plain food. They could only eat beans, which is what a fairy will eat, beans and milk. That's all. Now that boy, he'd be my great uncle if he had lived, but he did not. He never learned to eat our food. He pined and sighed and faded away, as green as apples, till the day he died, and they buried him at the crossroads. But my gran, she took to human ways. She ate her porridge, she ate her bread. Her hair and her skin slowly turned to white as she ran through the streets and the fields with the other village children, merry and bright. The vicar's wife took charge of her. She was christened on a warm summer's day. They called her Mary. They taught her not to speak of the child that she'd once been. They thought that she'd forgotten. She never forgot, and nor will I.
Yes, they weren't scared, lying on the cold stones, their arms and legs green, not the dark green of ivy, nor the yellow green of apples that endow summer boughs, not the deep green of the sea, but of the early breaking leaf. When they opened up their eyes were green too, and they spoke a green language which the trees and flowers knew. boy died of a wasting, but the girl lived on, eating broad beans. She forgot her green tongue and grew whiter each day, till christened and named and married all in white, not the white of milk quite, nor the white of a spring lily, waxen and still, nor the white of sea pearls formed in their shells. She was the white of the almond that shines o'er the hall, and that is all, that is all, that is all.
Double by Patience Egg Barbie. Something's happened to my son. He's not the same child I breastfed. He was healthy. I haven't slept in 3 nights, watching over his cot for signs of a change, when his eyes click open like a china doll. He can't remember how to be Samuel. He looks at me as if I'm not his mother. His eyes are grey-green. They say babies' eyes change colour in the middle of the night. He used to call me Mama. Now he only makes noises I don't understand. I don't understand. Now he only makes noises. Ma, ma. He used to call me in the middle of the night. They say babies' eyes change colour. His eyes are grey, green. I'm not his mother. He looks at me as if he can't remember how to be Samuel when his eyes click open. Like a china doll, watching over his cot for signs of a change. I haven't slept in 3 nights. I breastfed. He was healthy. He's not the same child. Something's happened to my son.
Double was by Patience Egg Barbie, one of the team who can't be here this evening. Some of you might have noticed that it was a palindrome poem, that it changes direction in the middle, and the last line of the first section becomes the first line of the last section, so you end up at the end of the poem where you were at the beginning. But in the middle of that, everything has changed. And this poem comes from stories about changelings, stories about ordinary children who, because their mother is absent or just because the fairies take advantage, suddenly you come home one day and you find that your healthy, beautiful baby has been replaced by a strange alien creature, something that only cries and eats and doesn't grow or thrive. And 19th century stories are full of tales about how if you can trick the changeling into revealing, yes, it is a fairy, then the fairies will take it back and you'll get your normal, happy, beautiful baby back again. And this led to terrible ill treatment, as you can imagine, of many children, particularly in Irish tradition.
So that was a piece by Barney, who fortunately can't be here today. He's had to go off and do a gig. So there was two pieces of music. The first one that you heard was by Inga Thompson from Fair Isle, who is also part of the project but can't be here either. And that was inspired by the idea of fairies and time stretching. For example, there's a famous story of, or there's lots of famous stories of musicians being enticed into fairy world and having the experience of playing for maybe a few hours to fairies and coming out, and it's been 200 years since they went into the fairy world. So that first piece obviously was playing around with time on the accordion, and then the second piece that Barney Morse Brown wrote is all about parallel worlds, and it's a piece in creation where, as I explained earlier, this is all work in progress, so there's going to be a lot more things added to that track.
So the next thing, it's not even a work in progress really. It's kind of the outline of an idea which some of us will be working on developing as we go. And I'll just kind of preface the whole thing. So mainly working as a musician, and this project was coming together, the first thing I thought would be interesting to do was to Google fairy music. And we're going to play you a video now, and this is one of the things which appeared. There you go. So, on seeing that, I was like, well, I kind of see there's a fairy connection loosely. Not quite sure how that was tied in Google, but their algorithms are a dark art. And so I thought, well, that's interesting. That's kind of Fairies is obviously an American propaganda video from the Second World War. So I thought, well, Fairies in the Second World War, what was going on? And as I started to look into it, the figure of Hugh Dowding kept cropping up. I don't know whether anyone knows him. No? No takers on Hugh Dowding? Well, he was let's get this right, he was the Air Chief Marshal in charge of fighter commands during the Battle of Britain. Now, he was a fully paid up member of the Fairy Investigation Society. Not a well-known fact. Heavy vegetarian, a strong pusher of animal rights, believed in reincarnation. So he basically was the man in charge of winning the Battle of Britain, at which point the RAF kind of, I think, took him to one side and sort of moved him into a bit of a backroom job because of some of the views he was coming out with to do with fairies, the afterlife, all this kind of stuff. Anyway, so we've got this figure of Hugh Dowding, and you start looking into it. Fairies, sometimes called gremlins, in the RAF aircraft. There's stories in German aircraft, American aircraft as well. Some of them go back to the First World War even. There's some references there. And so I thought it would be interesting to look into that story, this character of Hugh Dowding leading all this battle at the same time as kind of having this belief fairies were involved in the goings on. So then I thought, well, it'd be interesting also to look at the elements of battles with fairies. And I came across a battle which cropped up in a few places, although maybe not that well known. The Fairies and Pixies battle on the Devon and Somerset borders. Looking into that now, so we can't go into much more detail. And the plan is to try and pull these two battles together as they're going on. So, and what hopefully we're going to create at the end is a kind of stage performance. We're going to have Hugh Dowding, or a character representing Hugh Dowding, who is going to be narrating entries from his journal, discussing his views on the war and what's going on. We're also going to have another narrator who's going to be the King of the Fairies, leading this battle. By this point, the fairies will be up in the skies with the aeroplanes. There's kind of a proxy war going on. I'll leave it at that, and we'll see how we get on. Watch this space.
Tell everyone, I'm tired of watching the forests burn. It is time for us to remember we have always been a species of magic. I feel a bit of a fraud standing up here. I'm not going to do anything half as entertaining as play a banjo or a double bass or sing. We're presenting you today with a smorgasbord of ideas about fairies, and my small part in this is to proffer a little bit of poetry. We have two words in our title, modern and fairies, and after our session in Oxford, the thing actually that I really picked up on was modern. And we talked a little bit about, are fairies, are they some kind of gateway to perception? And I think actually the thing for me that I took away from our first workshop was that fairies have often been a way of explaining or engaging with ideas about gender, about women, about the body, about children, childbirth, things which are often difficult to explain or which people often have trouble engaging with. And so the thing that I really wanted to try and draw out was this sense of the modern and where fairies might exist today. And nothing says modern like Instagram. So what I've done to start with is simply to create an Instagram account. But we were talking a lot about social media and how it's in some ways a possible modern equivalent to the kind of in-between spaces that fairies have inhabited in the past. And some of you may have come across the idea of fairy hoaxes. I feel like the fairies are glitching into all of this, so we're clearly getting a message. It's like being at a seance. They're in the mics, that's where they are. The one place that it's very easy to fake things these days is social media. And what I'm going to try and do for the next couple of months is see if I can effectively fake myself into a fairy poet. So I've created a bit of an alter ego. She's started writing a few poems. She's started posting a few images. I'm not going to say much more except to urge you, if you are an Instagram user, to follow the lovely Alison, and just keep your eyes peeled over the next few months to see what she might be getting up to. Thank you.
So yeah, most of the time on this project I've just been having really interesting conversations, but I had to manifest this song today, so it's still a work in progress, but there are so many interesting elements to fairy stories, and one of the things I was thinking about, a couple of the things, was that the time going into fairy world or another world and coming back out, and time has, 100 years has passed, or you've been there for 100 years and only a second has passed, or things like that. And I was trying to think of experiences in my life where time goes weird. And maybe, I don't know if you've had experiences where maybe a group of people go, God, that time went really quick, or time went really slow, mainly being at school, or giving birth. That's something I've actually harnessed for this song, which apparently, so I recently gave birth, and apparently it didn't take very long, but it felt like a long time. So I kind of thought I'd write something a bit about that, but leave it open enough to interpretation. Anyway, I'll try it. Late was the hour, long was the wait, caught in a heartbeat, a heartbeat. Time moving slower, edging away. Breathe in a morning, You did something to me. You did something to me. Slow melts the river, gold turns to rain, flashes the summer, the sun. Haste in the gloaming, concrete and iron, lost in a moment, a moment. You did something to me. You did something to me. One more time. You did something to me. You did something to me.
I think we're going to move to our last piece that we have prepared, but then we can take more questions or anything. Yeah, so I put this one together. It's got quite a complicated system. I like an Excel spreadsheet, I won't lie. So we moved in lots of different ways, but for this one we kind of wanted the music, or I wanted the music to come out of the spell. So there's a few angles into this. I'll start with Isabel Gowdy. So Isabel Gowdy, has anyone heard of her? No, 1600s Scottish woman who was part of a coven, and she was one of the first recorded confessions of witchcraft. So there's brilliant transcripts of her in a courtroom setting. She was recorded 3 times over 6 weeks, and explaining her encounters with the devil, with the Queen of the Fairies, with other women from the village, and what they did and how they did it. And she gave over some spells, and she told of dark and unpleasant things that she got up to with the devil, which I won't go into detail, but she certainly did. And but this is real. This is a real person. So, you know, we're talking about gateways and into this fantasy world, but I find it quite interesting in the same way of the Second World War fighter pilots, that where the fairies and things that are quite tangible history interact as well. So she's a very clear human person, but has this very, very vivid encounter that she's expressed. So this was one of her spells that I took. And it is, I shall go into a hare with sorrow, sigh, and meckle care, and I go in the devil's name and stay till I come home again. So that's what she would say when she was going to transform into a hare and go out and do her fairy business. And then she did have a spell to turn back into a lady, but Jackie was a bit upset by that bit, so we just kept her as a hare.
It was that thing where if ever I got the chance to turn into a hare, no way am I coming back into human.
So, Jackie's beautifully written this out, and then what I did is I got all technical, and you'll see some letters here are highlighted. Those musically astute of you may notice that those are the letter names of the scale, so A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So all those that appear in here I then took into Sibelius, a really sort of magical program, and plonked them in and wrote a tune with those as the keynotes of the tune. And then I've taken this again, and she also turns into a cat and a crow, so the verses to this are her spells put back to the music made out of her spell. Spooky. So yeah, if I turn into a hare on first performance, then I apologise, and someone has to go and look at the counter spell, because I don't think my kids have